Welcome to the Co-Movement Gym podcast. This week, we are talking with Dr. Peter Lombardi. Dr. Pete has a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from SUNY Oswego and is a graduate of New York Chiropractic College. He has operated his chiropractic business in Oneida, New York for 28 years. His practice focuses on lifetime family wellness and has a unique client process that spearheads a thorough assessment, education, and care. Dr. Pete has been a co-movement client since 2012, has completed 2 Tough Mudders, 7 Boilermakers, and the Chicago Marathon. He is a father of 4 children, a husband, an avid hunter, garden enthusiast, and one of my best friends. I hope you enjoy this conversation. This episode is sponsored by Native Path Supplements and Lombardi Chiropractic. To support these companies, visit their websites listed in the description below. Dr. Pete, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, buddy. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I wanted to jump right into this episode and discuss some common chiropractic myths and have you and I chat about them. Obviously, I've been a patient of yours for 13 or 14 years. You and I are both big believers in the practice of chiropractic care. So the first myth that is quite common, and I looked these up, and there was some data done on this, and this was the number one, is that chiropractic is dangerous. Can you speak to that?
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm not surprised, but I am surprised that that's the number one myth. I think some of that comes from, especially today, these videos that people post, chiropractors themselves post online of violent maneuvers of grabbing somebody with a towel around their neck and yanking them. To me, it's not even really a chiropractic technique what they're doing, but those are my own colleagues that do that. So I could see and a reason why that's a myth today. But then there was a big kind of campaign or smear against chiropractic years and years ago. And then there was a period of time where a stroke was like a huge consideration in chiropractic. And first off, any medical intervention, there's always a risk. Going to get your hair cut, like at the hairdresser, and they put your head back in a sink and wash your hair, there's a risk of stroke there, believe it or not. But we never think twice about having some beautician wash your hair in a sink. But there are certain people that are more predisposed to having, like, say, a stroke than others, but we screen for that. If you're doing a good job, you're going to screen for that type of thing. But somebody knows somebody who knows somebody else that had an adverse event going to a chiropractor. So that, like anything, bad press always gets the most amount of attention. So you're always going to see something accentuated like that. But the best way to really kind of dispel that myth is to look at the actual numbers and say, who knows the numbers better than anybody? The insurance industry. So if you know, insurance premiums are a telltale sign of risk versus not risk, right? So what does the typical general practitioner, not a chiropractor, but a medical doctor, pay for malpractice insurance? Just your general practitioner. Look it up and see what they pay. Take a look at what an anesthesiologist pays for malpractice, and you're going to see it's a 6-digit number, extremely high. My malpractice insurance, I've been in practice for 28 years, is cheaper than my auto insurance. So
wow.
So do we hurt people and have claims against us? Probably to some degree, but the likelihood of it happening is extremely, extremely low, right? So I've never had an adverse event in 28 years in practice. That's speaking for me personally. But again, across the profession, you're going to look to pay, about $2,000 a year for malpractice insurance. So yeah, I'm probably a worse driver than I'm I'll cause more damage with my car than I will with chiropractic.
Dude, that's a really, really, really interesting point in how you, I'll say how you defended that, right? Like the insurance premium, like with the insurance premium for training, personal training, it's pretty cheap also, because the likelihood of us really messing someone up in our practice from an insurance perspective is very low.
Right.
I had no idea that was the case with chiropractic. So yeah, that's very, very,
what
very
is
cool.
like malpractice or liability insurance for a trainer? What does that go?
So for a gym or a trainer, which one do you want?
Either, both of them.
Yeah, so for a trainer, you're looking at 400 to 500 a year. And then for my facility is maybe over a little over 2,000 a
Yeah.
year for the facility insurance.
Yeah.
Which I'm very happy with that. And we obviously, in 14 years, just like you, we've never had a claim against us. And so there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. And I actually, I know a friend who's practiced for over 35 years and has never carried malpractice insurance.
Wow.
and this gentleman has taken care of thousands and thousands of people. And and I would never do that personally, but he's just always been very adamant about it. And I know he doesn't hurt people,
Yeah.
So.
Okay, next one. It says, this is funny. This was on the list, believe it or not, that you can crack your own back.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
you can. You
what
can.
are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Chirobaiting. No. Yeah, you can make your own spine pop and crack. Without a doubt, you can release that you can, anybody can, if your spine is somewhat flexible, you can take it to an end range and mobilize a joint segment. That's not chiropractic. And popping and cracking is not what chiropractic is about. It's really about removing nerve interference and improving the brain body communication. So that's totally different. When you're up leveling the nervous system, that's totally different than cracking joints in the spine, because there's techniques that we use that involve zero cracking, zero popping, and they're extremely effective at getting the nervous system to function at a higher level. And that's why is the nervous system important? Because it controls and regulates everything in your body. So we live our life through the nervous system. And if you can improve its performance, then you're improving your health.
I think a lot of people have the misperception that a loud adjustment is a good adjustment.
For
but
sure.
you and I know, you and I know that's not true. Obviously, a good chiropractor, like you said, is aligning your spine to help your nervous system function better. And just because you get loud cracks and pops doesn't mean it was better or worse,
Right. And I kind of have a bit of a pet peeve about even saying aligning the spine, because alignment of your spine, your posture, is a function of your nervous system. And that is something that people are like, oh, your spine's out of alignment and I put it back in alignment. Oh, really? How did that happen? I can put my spine out of alignment and put it back in alignment. And the only way I can do that is by my muscles contracting and relaxing and moving my body parts around. Well, what controls all of that? And it's controlled by your nervous system. You have volitional control and then you have involuntary control. And that's really your posture. Your posture is an involuntary learned control of your muscles. So we have postural muscles that are involuntary, and we can exercise those muscles, but you have to change the neural programming in order for it to change your posture and change your alignment. So when you hear something pop and click, you're not reprogramming the nervous system per se. You can be if it's done in a specific way to retrain the nervous system. But in most cases, you're actually facilitating just a need to pop and crack.
Yeah, and anyone can lay on a foam roller and get
Absolutely.
their spine
Absolutely.
crack.
Absolutely.
But that
And
doesn't
And it feels good. It feels good to extend and mobilize your spine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
chiropractic.
Yeah, I know. I agree. All right. So another one on the list here, it says that once you go,
I
you
love
have
it.
to keep going back forever.
Yes. And it's not that you have to keep going back forever. The question is, should you keep going back forever? That's a good question,
Yeah,
right? So
sure.
to me, this is an extremely important myth to talk about, because once you go, you always have to go. Definitely not. You don't ever have to come back. And if somebody doesn't want to be in my practice, quite honestly, I don't really want you there either, because it's not much fun. And I'm really big on having fun and enjoying life, because that's healthy. It's not healthy to work in an environment where nobody's having fun, right? So if
Yes.
we're gonna really push health in a different direction in this world and talk about wellness, we got to have fun. So that's foundational in a way. Okay, it's kind of like that's my. We've got to have fun. If we're not having fun, then what's the point? But two, once you go to a chiropractor, if the chiropractor, he or she, is working on improving and measuring and monitoring the function of your nervous system, and we say we move it from 80% activity level to 95% activity level, right? So what do you want to do? Do you want to keep it at 95, or do you want to let it slide back down to 80 or 74 or whatever? So the question is, do you want to continue to maintain the corrections and the improvements in the neural integrity, or do you want to just like go back to ignoring that and let it slip back? So there's this idea of maintaining, but then there's the idea, what about that other 5%? Right? Can we get it to 96%? Can we get it to 97, 98, 99? Is there still more to get? And research has shown that people under long-term chiropractic care don't maximize, they continue to show improved wellness scores as they monitor the function of the nervous system. So how cool
Wow.
is that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And it makes complete sense that if your body is in that healthy aligned state longer, you're going to see better results. The analogy I'm thinking of, Pete, is if someone went on a diet and
Mm-hmm.
they lost 30 pounds, their blood work was much better, they feel a lot better, and then they decide to just stop eating healthy because they already got to where they want to go.
Happens all the time.
Without a doubt, yeah,
Yep.
without a doubt, the health naturally will reverse the other way unless there is some form of maintenance level healthy eating. It's the same thing with training. It's the same thing with chiropractic care.
100%. And we try to teach people that the spine is a body part like your teeth that should be cared for early in life and regularly throughout your life. So parents do what to their kids? That when they're little, what do they teach their kids about their teeth? What do they teach them to do?
Brush,
Brush, floss with regularity, like every day. And then if they do that for years to come, what do they get?
healthy teeth.
Yeah, when they're older, they have less problems with their teeth, they're healthier, and they still have their teeth in most cases, right? Now, if on the other hand, they never did anything to their teeth, they ignored them their entire lifetime, what would happen?
The cavities, health issues. Yeah.
Yeah, other things will precipitate as a result of that. And then the ability to try to retrieve what you've lost over all that level of neglect is a lot of work. And unfortunately,
Mhm.
that's how we see people show up in a chiropractic office initially, is that there's quite a bit of work to do on the front end to try to restore what we can restore. We can't restore everything because there's just been too much neglect in most cases. But once you get it back into health, like say you go to the dentist after 30 years of neglect, they pull a few teeth, your gums bleed a lot, it hurts, it's not a lot of fun, you spend a lot of money. Now what do you do? Do you go back to neglecting and never brush and floss the few teeth that they saved? Or do you just be like, I'll see if how long this will last, or I'm gonna learn my lesson and I'm gonna take care of it, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I feel like, and maybe you see this on your end, but like clients that we see maybe with the highest level of neglect to their bodies over the longest period of time want to commit to the shortest period of time, trying to get back to where they should be in an optimal state of health. So they want to commit to a 3 month package versus 12. But you haven't really done a whole lot over the last 15 or 20 years, and it's going to take 3-4 years to get you back possibly to optimal health. Do you see that
all the
on your
time.
end?
Well, yes.
Okay.
And because, we live in an instant gratification society, and so many people look at taking care of their health as like an immediate problem that's an event that needs to be addressed. And it really is a process. And if you treat it like an event, you're going to look for an event to fix it. Like, oh my gosh, I slept wrong, and that's what's wrong with my neck. And then we take an x-ray and we see 25 years of neglect. Did you really sleep wrong? But the person initially is thinking, no, I slept wrong. And if you could just pop my neck, it'll take away that pain and I'll be good to go again. And the same thing, like, oh, I know I haven't been working out really much. Could you just show me some exercises and some stretches? And maybe if I just eat better and I cut out alcohol for 3 months, maybe I can lose 10 pounds and I'll feel good. Right. And yeah, you probably will if you stretch, mobilize, exercise. And then what? Like what's your long-term vision? What are you trying to accomplish? And the reality is that we just have been trained as a culture to put our heads down and go and ignore ourselves in that process. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think the overarching piece here, right, is viewing it as a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to let's just get it fixed and move on. It has to be integrated into your daily, weekly, monthly routine consistently, not just chiropractic care, but just I'm talking health in general.
Everything.
I always joke, like I say this a lot, but taking care of your health and optimizing your health is a part-time job, right? Like it takes time, effort, hours, right? Money. And so when we see clients where the switch flips in terms of it being a part-time job and it's their lifestyle, actually, you see a whole new person, come out.
Whole different outcome happens, right? And I like that analogy, Josh, because it is work, but you don't get a paycheck in the form of like, this is going to help me pay my bills directly, but indirectly it does, because now you have more energy, you have less downtime, right? You have less expense going into dealing with the crises that develop later on in life. And you have these other rewards like the increased ability to be a producer, right? Instead of a consumer, which now instead of being on the defense, now you're on the offense. Now you get to choose. You have freedom of choice now with what you get to do in your latter years of your life. How cool is that?
Yeah, I use the same analogy. I just say, are you an asset or a liability? Right. And if you're sick and no energy and depressed, you most likely are drawing energy from the world instead of giving it energy. So yeah, similar viewpoint with that. Definitely.
100%. Yeah.
Let's move on. So you have a new service at your facility. I'm very interested in it. I know you've got some outstanding results with it, called Softwave.
Oh, you heard about that.
Yeah, of course. So can you explain to listeners what that is? Because I would guess that if we polled people, 9 out of 10 people would say that all you do at your office is adjustments. And so Softwave is not an adjustment. It's a therapeutic healing tool. And so what is it?
Okay. So interesting, and if you ask me, I'm a chiropractor first and foremost, and I love what I do. I love helping people through the power of the chiropractic adjustment. But I was really encouraged to bring this technology into my practice a couple of years ago by a colleague, and I really did not want to bring it in. But the long and the short of it is it's an electrohydraulic wave. That is, it's like a shock wave, but if you've ever heard of the technology lithotripsy, the technology they use to break up kidney stones, it's a hydraulic sound wave that's a focus wave that can penetrate deep into the body. Soft wave is different. It's an electrohydraulic wave, meaning that it looks like a spark plug flashing, because so there's this healing light, but then there's a wave that gets sent through water that penetrates into the body about the depth of the height of a soup can. Okay. And about the diameter of one too. So this is a diffused wave. So it's not focused. And the reason for the diffusion is that it causes zero tissue damage. So why would somebody do this? It's used to help treat different types of old injuries, new injuries, pain syndromes, you name it. I've seen remarkable results with healing with this. And what it does is it causes a compression and an expansion of your cells, which actually works to revive the cell by helping cleave free radicals off the cell membrane. So it actually rejuvenates your existing cells that are damaged, but it also causes those cells to send out signals to the body to send your own resident stem cells into the area to literally regenerate damaged tissue. So I mean, this is trademarked. This is patented. This is not something that is like a claim that's made without any science behind it. There's tons of science behind it, lots of research articles with healing of tissues and tissue regeneration. And so they're allowed to call this a tissue regeneration machine. So we brought it in, and people with torn ligaments, torn tendons, arthritic knees, hips, shoulders, you name it, extremely effective in a very short period of time. Yeah.
Now, is this something that you need to do maintenance wise, or is this a one time, a 3 time, 10 time package and then it heals? Like, what is that?
It's both.
Mhm.
When I initially started using it, I didn't use it. I didn't even recommend or talk about any type of maintenance for it. But if somebody has a positive biological response on a discovery session or an initial session, we typically will recommend a 6-week protocol, which is
Mhm.
usually 2 sessions a week for 2 weeks and once a week for 4 weeks. And the reason is because all the research says that you will maximize stem cell migration to the area after 6 weeks. So you can keep going 7 and 8 weeks, but you won't bring in extra stem cells than you will in that 6-week window. After 6 weeks, we give people 4 to 6 weeks of more healing time with no treatment with Softwave at all. And that's because those last stem cells that we brought in through that treatment have come to maturation. And if for people that don't know, stem cells are cells that have not, they are rudimentary cells, they're immature cells that can turn into any type of cell in your body. So if we're treating an area that's got muscle damage, the stem cells that come in will turn into new muscle cells. Same with ligaments, same with tendon, you name it in the body. It works on pretty much everything. Yeah.
What are the common body parts that you're healing mostly? I'm assuming like shoulders and knees. Would that be the two?
Shoulders, knees, spinal areas as well. Uh, Carpal tunnel, we've had a huge amount of success with carpal tunnel. Um, and plantar fasciitis, that's a huge one as well. So many people struggle with plantar fasciitis. This has been a game changer for those people. We had a woman that just finished her 6-week protocol, and she was a really tough sell. She did not want to try it. She was scared. It was, something that she had endured so much pain and seen so many specialists and tried everything else. And her first name's Amy. Amy was even brought in by one of our practice members. That's probably the only reason she tried it, was because this other gentleman brought her in, and she did phenomenal after the 6 weeks. No symptoms. I mean, literally healed
Oh,
And she may come back again for a one-off session to
mhm.
just to see how it's doing, because as you treat an area, it becomes less and less painful. And if there's still damaged tissue, you'll have pain when we treat it. If the tissues are totally healed, you won't have any pain anymore when we go over and treat a segment. So yeah. Yeah, those are
Yeah.
probably the most common ones. A lot of rotator cuff injuries. Those are super common. Yeah.
Yeah. Another service you offer, you do labs, blood work
Mm-hmm.
on people, and then you have a team that interprets that and makes recommendations. I'm really curious, what are 2 to 3 common problem areas with labs that you see frequently? I know there's hundreds of things, but what are
Mm-hmm.
the top 2 or 3 that you see off in someone that is on the unhealthy side of things?
Yeah, when we look at blood chemistry, we work with 2 functional medicine doctors that created the company Read It, which Dr. G is one of your clients actually, um,
Yep.
and has been on the podcast. So they look at 8 different systems, and the low hanging fruit is usually blood sugar. That is by far probably the number one uh, big factor. Number 2 most common, I would say, would be vitamin D levels just in the toilet. We
Yeah.
had this gentleman check the other day. His vitamin D number was 12, and
Oh,
your
wow.
your lab range, which is the range that is kind of the loose parameter, which everybody's used to hearing, is 30 to 100 for vitamin D, but the ideal functional range is 70 to 80. And so at
Yeah.
12, you are really compromising your immune system, because vitamin D works more like a hormone than it is an actual
Mhm.
vitamin. So super
We
important to
it's
go ahead.
it's funny you mentioned the vitamin D. We had 3 people this week, tell me how deficient they were after some blood work. And yeah, they were suffering from like minor depression episodes and just, low testosterone, like the whole gamut of stuff that you and I see.
Sure.
But you're talking like I've heard clients through the years at 16, 18, 21,
Mm-hmm.
and they just don't know why they feel so off. And for everyone listening, obviously this is a generalized recommendation, but like if you live in upstate New York, you're not seeing a lot of sun, and so even if you are seeing sun, it has to be sunlight on your skin.
Right.
So if you're wearing clothes, which you probably should be, you're not really absorbing it, and so you need to be supplementing it. The last vitamin D test that I had, it was 82,
Mm-hmm.
and I was happy with that. But now, as to let people know, the months that there's sunlight out and it's warm, I'm running 3 4 times a week without a shirt on, in shorts, absorbing the sunlight. But
Mm-hmm.
I also supplement in the sunnier months, maybe 3 to 5,000 a day
Mm-hmm.
of IUs of vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
And then this time of year, I'm like 8 to 10 a
Yeah,
day.
I'm doing 10.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So we had a client just yesterday. He texted me, his vitamin D level was 20. And the doctor made a recommendation, okay,
Mm-hmm.
to start supplementing 2,000 IUs a day. And I'm never going to say like don't listen to your doctor, but I just said like you got to get alternative viewpoints on that. And I actually sent him Dr. G's contact
Mm-hmm.
info for on Instagram so he can like maybe connect. Um, but yeah, so like 2,000 a day, if you're already at a super deficient level, am I wrong? But like that will never get you caught up to where you need to be, right?
It won't get you caught up, but you definitely will. Your body will function better with that, right? So
Okay.
it's it, it's way better. It's a way better recommendation than it's not a big deal. Let's not even look at it, right? So I don't
Mm-hmm,
want to throw
mm-hmm.
the doctor under the bus there, but yeah, you're probably going to want to be taking 10,000 IUs for at least 90 days to get it up there. Right. And that's typically what Dr. G would recommend in those types of situations is let's do a 90-day trial and retest. So when is his medical
Yes.
doctor going to retest that? Next year at his physical or in 2 years? Like, how often is that getting done? Because you can change it in 90 days. And say you do take 10,000 IUs, and in 90 days, now your vitamin D level is 40. Like, you need to stay on that 10,000 for another, you didn't change it enough. Or better yet, what if it goes to 120? Well, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. It's not dangerous at 120, but you need to back it off now and try to dial in and find that sweet spot, right? So you and I have done things like this to dial it in and find that sweet spot, because ultimately all we're looking for is to get the best out of our bodies, right? So
yeah, and it's a cheap supplement. There's no reason people shouldn't really be dialing that in. They're gonna feel a lot better. Lombardi Chiropractic has been Co-Movement's trusted chiropractor for the last 14 years. They've worked with hundreds of our clients, and I can confidently say their unique client process is truly incredible. Whether you suffer from migraines, low energy, nagging pain, or just simply want to improve your overall health, I highly recommend contacting the team at Lombardi Chiropractic. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast and receive 50% off your initial consultation and x-rays. Native Pass Supplements has been a podcast sponsor of ours since day one. The reason being, because our clients feel amazing using their supplements. Numerous products today contain useless fillers and incorrect dosages. Native Pass ingredients are sourced from only the highest quality, properly combined nutrients, all while being offered at a competitive price. Use code COMO15, that's COMO 15 at checkout, and receive 15% off each order. Talking about glucose, metabolic syndrome and all of that. Like, obviously, you and I know, with the number of people we see, they eat too many carbs, simple carbs, sugar, and they're pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic. And so that was the first one that you had named. So it is quite common on your end also, from what you're seeing, and you're stemming that from mainly nutrition, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Take a walk through a local store and just look at what people have
Yeah.
in their carts, or
Yep.
just look at the people in general. If you're carrying all this extra body fat, you probably have a sugar handling problem, more than likely. But, I have practice members all the time that tell me that, oh, my doctor told me my blood sugar's not an issue. Well, what's the standard that they're comparing you to? A full-blown diabetic that's got an A1C of 10? And I've had people tell me this, that oh, my A1C was 12. I'm down to 8 now. My doctor's super happy with me. Like, you're still a type 2 diabetic. You still are insulin resistant. You still have major problems, and the danger with that and what it does to your nerves and to your blood vessels, the inflammation that it creates, and propensity for disease is so much higher. So yeah,
It's so. Yeah, go ahead.
well, I'm just saying, like, I mean, I know that how important blood sugar is, because excessive blood sugar in your body is damaging to the insides of your arteries. And so what happens? Your body has to make an innate response to that inflammation. And so it makes cholesterol. And so every doctor is hypersensitive about a cholesterol number, but it's not usually a true fat problem, right? It's why is the body making this cholesterol in the first place? And it's usually because inflammation is so high, but instead they're going to give you a statin drug, right? Which is going to do what? It's going to short circuit other production of important things that's made downstream from cholesterol, like your sex hormones, right? So everybody wants to have their sex hormones tested because they feel like their hormones are off. But hey, let's start with something very fundamental: your blood sugar. Where is that? Let's fix that first. And that's what Dr. G talks about, is let's take care of the low-hanging fruit first. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny, that parallel. I don't think most people make that parallel at all. Blood sugar levels and hormone levels, all these inflammation you mentioned, like I think people think, high glucose blood sugar levels is in pre-diabetic or diabetic is, they're thinking insulin shots and I don't have a real problem. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I think that's genetic, but there's a whole slew of things that are all connected. And they're even showing now research, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's dementia or Alzheimer's or both. It's like type 3 diabetes of the brain. Is that right?
It is. Yeah, that there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
research pointing in that direction. And what's wild is that I've had some practice members that tell me about their parents or their grandparents with blood sugar, or not blood sugar, but with dementia and Alzheimer's. And I make a simple recommendation, and I'm not trying to treat their dementia or their Alzheimer's, but I explain that correlation to them, and because your brain uses more glucose than anything in your body by weight. So therefore, if you can't get glucose from the blood into the cells of your brain, they're not going to function correctly. So we'll make a recommendation for them to take exogenous ketones. And ketones are a way to give your cells energy without having to deal with insulin whatsoever. And it really helps with getting yourself more fat adapted. So in other words, getting energy from fat. And the crazy thing is it seems to improve their cognition. So pretty wild.
So many people are still confused on this topic, it stemming mainly from the food pyramid, right? It was like the 70s and 80s, and they created the food pyramid, which you and I find a joke. But unfortunately, the food pyramid is still the same as what it was 50 years ago. And that is, I believe, probably the main culprit of obesity and a whole host of health issues, because academia is teaching it still. I know that. One of my friends is a nutritionist, and they swear by the food pyramid. And, you're talking, I think it's like 6 to 10 servings of grains and fruits a day. They still have fats as like used sparingly, moderate protein. And I don't know. I feel bad for individuals in general, because if that's where they're getting their information from, trusted sources, the government, it has really done a whole host of issues. And I know so many people still believe that fat is making people fat or giving them high cholesterol. But meanwhile, when you look at the leanest, meanest people, athletes, and, they're taking in 50-60% of their calories from animal fat, saturated fat, and getting high levels of protein with low to moderate level carbs based on activity. So the narrative is still so far in the wrong direction that we have a long ways to go.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I'm right now in day 3 or 4 of the carnivore diet. So
Nice.
I'll tell you what, this is my favorite diet so far, because I've always enjoyed eating meat. So sorry for all the vegetarians, not so sorry, but it's the easiest switch I've ever made, because like I said, I enjoy meat, but you also you don't ever really feel hungry, because you get to eat, and you eat to your full, because you just won't keep eating you won't just keep eating a more fat and more steak, right? Like you eat a steak and you're like, okay, do you want 4 more steaks? No. But if it was somebody rolled out a piece of chocolate cake, you'd be like, oh, I could have that. I could eat and a piece of pie, and I could have a dessert. Like carbohydrates, we have nothing in our brain that tells us that that's enough. Whereas with fat and protein, we feel satisfied and we feel full. And so it's so much easier. But your body's intelligent by design, and it's going to figure out what to do with what you put in it. And you want to have adaptation to work in your favor and not working against you. Whereas putting in excessive carbohydrates, your adaptation is going to be, we've got to do something with this. So it's going to store it. It's going to store it as fat in your liver first. Once your liver is full, then it's going to store it on your body. So we have tons of people walking around with excessive body fat. And the food pyramid is really not like, I don't go grocery shopping, and nobody really does, like, oh, I need to get my food pyramid figured out. But like you mentioned it's the government. So they're going to, all these, government subsidized farming practices, so it's like soy, wheat, and corn. We're going to put this into the foods because this is government subsidized, and we're going to put it in to try to satisfy this food pyramid. And along with that comes all the toxicities of, the, the herbicides and pesticides and the glyphosate and all that's downstream. And that would probably be like the next thing that we see the most of on blood chemistry is thyroid problems. So, and autoimmune conditions. So that's the other thing is autoimmune conditions are through the roof. And a lot of people have no idea that they even have them.
Yeah.
So
are you strict carnivore, or what's the protocol you're doing? I'm curious. Right now,
I'm eating meat and eggs. So
nice.
Nice. I don't know what else is there. To me, that's about what I'm doing. Yeah. Meat and eggs.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know Andy did, I think it was last year, he did 7 days of exactly what you just said, is strict carnivore. The reason I ask is because Dr. Paul Saladino lays out 4 tiers of what he calls the quote unquote carnivore diet, where, the bottom tiers, you're allowed some fruits, and some raw dairy, but you're going strict for how long? A week?
35 days.
35 days.
I think that's it. Yeah. Yep. 5 weeks.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear. We should maybe just hop on another podcast after that's done to talk about your experience just on that. That would be cool. I think people would like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I didn't even want to do it. My wife did. So,
oh, no way.
Yeah, she had got Lyme this summer. And so she had, she got bit by ticks 2 different occasions and had Lyme, but she's had some inflammation as a result of it. And she said, you know what, I want to try this carnivore diet to reduce some inflammation. And that's really the whole idea, is to reduce inflammation. And I know she's always had a propensity to want to always have some carbs, not necessarily eating bad carbs, but just in general, she's always liked to have some carbs. And I know she's been a little bit reactive hypoglycemic at times, because if you wake up in the morning and if you can't eat, can't go about your day without eating, and you get hangry, then you're probably reactive hypoglycemic to some degree. That's one of the symptoms of it anyway. Whereas myself, I can get up and I can fast, no problem, because I've done fasts over the time. I've done, a 24-hour, a 48, a 3-day fast with nothing but water, and your body gets fat adapted. So I periodically intermittent fast anyway. So this was no big deal for me to just, all I can eat is meat. Okay, that's real tough,
But let's talk about something you just mentioned. I didn't have this on the questions here, but it's interesting. I've heard this a lot with clients, where when they get up, if they don't eat quick, they get nauseous, weak, lightheaded. Now, what I've always said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they aren't fat adapted. Their body is looking for sugar or an easily digestible calorie to give them immediate energy, versus you or I wake up. Most times I go 4 or 5 hours in my morning before I eat. I'm never hungry. And because I'm fat adapted. Is that right?
It's pretty accurate. Yeah, it's pretty accurate. Yeah. And, it's interesting because it all spills into your hormones as well. So some people really struggle with sleep, because of blood sugar issues. And that's like, what? How does that affect your sleep? Well, it affects it quite a bit because of cortisol. And cortisol actually is a stress hormone, which, who has stress? Pretty much all of us have some level of stress. And your cortisol levels can get out of balance, but cortisol is what wakes us up in the morning, right? And if you're waking up in the middle of the night around 3 a.m., it's probably because your cortisol levels are high. And a lot of people will get up at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then they feel like they can't fall back asleep. Like they slept for, 3 hours or maybe 4 hours, and then they feel wide awake, but they know they need to go back to sleep. And then they'll just toss and turn and maybe get out of bed and go read a book. And eventually, a couple hours later, they might fall back asleep again. And then they have to get up and then they're exhausted, right? So, and that's usually because your cortisol levels are way out of control. If that's you, one of the, just a quick trick to do is to shut off cortisol at that moment is grab a piece of like bacon or something that's going to give you a little bit of fuel, but more fuel from like protein and fat, and just eat something at that point and do that periodically day in and day out. And hopefully that'll help you decrease that cortisol level in that first thing in the morning, because the whole innate thing that we're doing there is that cortisol wakes us up because our body needs fuel. So we need to go find the fuel, right? So that hunter-gatherer mentality, it's a survival mechanism, right? So, and the way to reduce it at night is really stop eating, right? Don't eat before you go to bed. Like, give yourself a good, 2 to 3 hour window of eating nothing, and you'll probably won't have as many occurrences of waking up in the middle of the night. So that's a little bit of a tip you can try.
Let's go a little farther into that, because what you just described is a client, a long-term client here, that just disclosed a few months ago that at 2 a.m. they get up every single night very, very hungry and can't fall back asleep. And they get up, and I didn't know this for years, they eat like candy, and then they are able to crash and go back to bed till morning. So that sounds like the same case study you just laid out. Does this specific individual have blood sugar issues, I'm assuming, and cortisol issues, or one or the other?
Both. It's probably a blood sugar issue that's caused a cortisol issue. Yeah. Yeah.
So while this person is sleeping, their blood sugar drops low, and then cortisol spikes, wakes them up. They feed the response of needing to eat with an easy calorie, digestible food. It lowers cortisol, and then they're able to go back asleep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well,
so what's the best thing for them to do is to find out what their A1C is, find out what their fasting blood glucose is. In other words, get these tests done, get it evaluated by a functional medicine expert, which I'm not a functional medicine expert. I'm a chiropractor. I just know a lot about it because I work with functional medicine doctors all the time with my clients, and I'm just kind of the in-between, right? But this is a common pattern that we see, right? Because we all have these same instinctual built-in mechanisms for survival.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of value there for listeners, so that's great. I'll be sharing that with the client right there. There's his answer.
Good. Yep.
All right, so here we've got some rapid fire-ish type questions. Take as long as you want, but I know that you work really hard 7 days a week, and you keep your life squared away and in proper order. I've been really good friends with you since like 2011. What kind of struggles do you have, though, in terms of like things that don't come easy to you?
That's an interesting question. What doesn't come easy to me? I don't know if anything comes easy to me. I think I always feel like I just have to work at everything that I do. Like, what comes easy to me, I guess, is laying my head on the pillow at night and falling asleep. I usually never have a problem falling asleep. And but I would say like everything is by design, right? Like you may see the finished product, but I was just as messed up as anybody, right? Like we all start off not knowing anything. And then we think we know everything when we're a teenager. And then we realize we don't know anything after we move out for the first time. And there's this ebb and flow of that, like learning. And then, oh, wow, once I've learned this much, now I realize I don't know anything. So, I don't think anything comes easy to me. I think everything is a bit of a struggle. And then I guess my biggest superpower is I don't like to give up.
Yeah. I
that's
just solid.
Yeah.
I got that question from, I've been listening to David Goggins, was just interviewed by Andrew Huberman.
Mm-hmm.
Was a really, really good conversation. Then Alex Hermosi, who I know you listen to, also talks about it, where like everything really is a grind and
Yep.
it's hard. And
100%.
there's really not a lot of, like, you and I have fun at work. Like you were saying that in the beginning of the conversation, but things are a grind. Like, and really I'm 41, and last year was the first year where I've really come to terms with being just okay with the redundancy of getting shit done, doing a really good job, but not expecting it to be like the greatest time. And hearing people like David Goggins and Alex Hormozy say that, like, that is it. Like, that's the way to success, is doing the boring things.
Yeah.
That was really refreshing to hear that. And so hearing you say basically the same thing, that nothing really comes easy, and that most people see the finished product. That's cool to hear
Yeah.
that. So
I
that's
mean,
good.
and I think about that as I'm reflecting on my life and how, like, what was easy? Nothing was really easy. Nothing came easy. It's been hard work. It's been sticking to things. It's been being intentional about, like, figuring out what the heck you're going after, like making decisions. Just make some decisions and then stick to it and then go. Like, just put the pedal down and go. Don't look back. Like, that's the heart. It's not easy to do that. Some people are like, oh, it's easy for me to make decisions. Well, yeah, if you've made a bunch of them, you get good at it, right? Like, when you do enough of something, it looks easy to everybody else. Whereas if you are doing something for the first time, it's clunky, it's hard, it's difficult, but keep doing it and you develop a muscle there. You get neural programmed into, now I know how to do this. It doesn't take as much effort, right? So that's how habits are created. You want to create, you have created habits your whole life. Everybody creates habits their whole life, and they're easy to do, and you fall into those habits. But to create new habits, good habits, productive habits, habits that are taking you in a direction you want to go, that takes a grind in the beginning, where it's clunky and slow and awkward and difficult, to where it becomes easier and easier and easier. And your brain begins to fire those pathways in a routine basis. And that's how we learn, is repetition, repetition, repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill.
What you're describing is someone taking action.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that David Goggins said is, what's so easy for people to think how they're improving themselves is to sign up for another seminar or read another book, but they just aren't doing shit to improve themselves.
Josh, I've
And
done
he
it.
said he says he sees people at the same person, like, at multiple times of his traveling and speaking. They ask the same question, like, nothing's changed.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't taken anything of what they have, quote unquote, learned and put into action.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you and I both see that. But what's hard is that clunky part, what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, when you take action, you suck, most likely, whether it's exercise or health routine or saving more money, or like you and I starting podcasts. The first 2 years of our podcast was pretty awful. You and I have both come a long ways, but like, the only way to get better is to jump in and take action. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, David Goggins, Alex Hormozy, you name it. I mean, you talk about going to seminars. Nobody went to more seminars than me and took notes. And I have shelves and bookcases full of notes and interviews and all this stuff. And it's like, well, what are you going to do with it? What are you actually going to do with it? Now I go to a seminar and I'll write down notes, but then I cherry pick like 3 things that I'm going to dedicate the next 90 days to getting good, right? And if you can do 3 things out of an entire weekend seminar and you put them into play in 90 days, like, I'm disciplined. I'm going to do that. Come hell or high water, this is what I'm getting done. That's how I launched my podcast. I got back from a seminar and I said, all right, I'm doing a podcast. It's going off in September. And before the end of September, I launched the first podcast, and now we're into season 3, So
Yeah. You have to detach from being nervous about sucking. Like,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
that's something that I've really worked on in the last 5 or 6 years with our company and different things and this and that, is just like jumping in and learning as you go along versus thinking you're going to have this like master plan and that it's going to go perfect. And, once you align things properly, and it's never the case. And so the sooner that you can jump into any new routine, and learn that not today's the day.
mm-hmm. Right. You can plan all day long, and that's important. You got to plan, but then after your plan, now you have to execute. You have to execute, and then you have to assess, right? Because you plan, you execute, now you have to assess. And after you assess and you make adjustments, which is basically a new plan, and then you're back to execute. But if you don't ever execute, nothing happens. Nothing happens without that.
Where do you see your business in 10 years?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about that a lot because we just brought in another chiropractor who's been absolutely fantastic. I feel very, very blessed to have Dr. Tim Jennings on board with us. He's a very special addition to the practice, and he's brought a lot of great tools to the practice. So I've got 2 of my children that are in the chiropractic matrix, right? So my oldest boy, Nate, is graduating, and his wife is graduating in March. So they're going to be new chiropractors coming out. And my middle boy, Luke, is going to be a chiropractor in a couple of years. He just started. So I guess in the next 10 years, I could see us having a couple of more locations for the practice, just because here's the thing, there's chiropractors everywhere, and they help a certain niche and group of people. And I look at the influence that we have in our area, and we have this certain community of people that we're helping. And the services that we offer, the way that we do things, I think it's just the way that I take care of myself and my family, and it produces a great result. And I just want to see that for more families and other communities. So in the next 10 years, that's what I'm working on trying to expand into or grow into. I know there's a lot of work, and I know there's a lot of learning along the way to get there. But in the end, I think in 10 years from now, that would be very satisfying to know that we utilized the information that we have now and the tools that we have to help more families and more people to live healthier.
It'll be so cool to see that roll out. And yeah, it'll be cool to see the progress. What's one New Year's resolution that you have this year? Do you even make New Year's resolutions?
Nope. No.
Yeah. And it's funny. I asked that. I thought I knew the answer for you on that. I was asked like about my New Year's resolutions the other day, and I make goals year round. I'm assuming just like you. But I don't have anything specific starting January 1st.
Well, that's the thing,
So no New
like
Year's goals.
like New Year's goals, like, okay, but guess what? I'm still working on goals, right? Like I set these goals, but it's not based on January 1st. It's based on we're setting this goal, and when we hit it, now we just set a new goal. And I don't know when that's going to be because we put timelines on them, and sometimes the timeline is not long enough, and sometimes the timeline is way too long, and we hit it way sooner. So like January 1st doesn't have to be the day that you set your goals. It's a great reminder for people that are not very good at goal setting, because maybe this should be the year that you set some goals. How about that? Right? Like pick a goal, go for it, see what happens, put some time to it, make it measurable, right? Something that's attainable, and then pat yourself on the back and set a new one. Develop that muscle.
I think the New Year's crowd puts too much pressure on themselves. They feel as though they know, most people know the changes in their life they need to make, right? Like you're getting very clear with yourself. But then they put it off and they say, well, now's the time, New Year's, because it's cliche and that's what I should be doing. But and my questions for those people are like, why not before New Year's, after New Year's? Why that goal? Why didn't you do it last year? Like, there's so many different questions, but when you sort of break through like for you and I, New Year's is just another day. It's just another week, right? And it's like business goes on, family, friends, goals, vision, like it doesn't make shit to me, and so hearing you say that's cool, I figured that's how you'd see that too.
Yeah. I mean, I think from our cultural standpoint, we get done with the holidays and most people do a bunch of things they're not real proud of through the holidays when it comes to their taking care of their health, right? So they work harder, they spend extra money that they really didn't need to spend. They probably ate crappy, they probably didn't exercise at all, maybe got into more alcohol than they wanted to, and probably didn't sleep that great. And most of them are getting sick now, right? So usually there's a fallout of sickness that comes after holidays. They usually, the first wave happens after Halloween with the kids getting sick. The next wave happens after Thanksgiving. And then now we're into the post-Christmas, New Year's sickness, that we're going to see that it results from it. And culturally, we're like, oh man, we've just been so beat up over the last holidays that it's supposed to be a celebratory time. I get it. But how do you celebrate, right? Like I celebrate by going on a hike,
Yeah.
like that's what I do. And I sent you video from the top of a mountain that I went for a hike on New Year's Day. Like that's what I did first thing when I got up. Like I want to start the new year off looking at this. This is a great way to get my mind straight. But I think that's why people like, I'm going to go to the gym now because that's all behind me, the damage that I did. And now I got to try to fix it. And so again, we're that event driven mindset. I'm going to try to fix it in the next 90 days. And that's why you see the gyms will taper off. Their memberships will dwindle after 90 days. And when the nice weather comes, then forget about it. Why do I need to go work out inside? I can go for a walk. And yeah, the habits just change with the seasons. And that's, a life off purpose,
Yeah. I
misdirected.
couldn't agree. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. That was the first text message I got for 2024 was opening your video.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
cool.
good.
I'm glad it was a good image.
Um, yeah. All right. So let's see here. Two more questions. Give our listeners one tip and only one tip that will add value to their lives.
Mm. One tip to add value to their lives. I think, the biggest bang for your buck is to get to know who Jesus is. And that's something that I know has really changed my life. As a chiropractor, that really led me on a path to discover more about why our bodies have this innate ability. And it got me into digging down deeper rabbit holes. And it led me to Christianity, believe it or not. And, my faith and my spirit life has just gone bigger and better every year. And this past year has been no exception. And it brings me more peace, more confidence, more comfort. And our world needs it more than ever. And the only way for that to happen is for you to figure it out for yourself and to develop a relationship there, because you can't develop a relationship one off with anything or anyone. And this year I've poured into my relationship with my Lord and Savior, and it has produced fruit that is immeasurable. So if I could give you that value, it's not chiropractic value. It is life-changing value, and it has eternal rewards that I just pray that you all can get a hold of.
this past year, 2023, I started reading the Bible, which is a new thing for me. I was much more consistent going to our church in Utica. And I had some very, very good awakenings, I guess you could say, and revelations, through that. And so I'm looking forward to moving forward in regards to what I learn, in regards to that. So that's a unique answer. I think that's a first for our podcast. So that's good.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, we are all spiritual beings, and people try to figure it out in a lot of ways, and we're all created in this unique image of God, and He just wants to know us, and He wants us to seek Him. So it's your life will take on a whole new meaning, and it's not it's not what you're going to be giving up, it's what you're going to be gaining. That's the part that so many people I think struggle with. It's like, oh, if I do that, then I have to give this up. Well, yeah, but you know what, you're going to be gaining so much more. That's the part that I just love. I'm just so grateful for. Yeah.
Looking back at your early 20s, in many cases, that's where people are totally lost. Is there one memory, relationship, or experience that stands out in regards to having a huge impact on your life that may have shifted things for you?
In my early 20s,
Yeah,
I would say,
early to mid 20s.
okay. The earliest impact I would say was, I mean, the huge impact was meeting my wife. And I met her, it was 1990. So I was 19-ish, going on 20 at that time. So, and the reason is because here was a woman that really held me to a higher standard than I held myself. So, and I really, that's what I admired about her more than anything. I saw a person that was better than me, that I really wanted to be more like, and I wanted around me more. So, yeah. And my wife, and how amazing she is. And,
Yes,
she
yes,
has, yeah, by far,
yeah.
that's the biggest impact there. Yeah, for sure. Relationship wise.
Yeah, that's amazing. And seeing you get emotional with that, I can understand. She's been in my life since 2011, as have you, and both of you have added tremendous value to my life. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, how can people learn more about your facility and services, Dr. Pete?
Probably the quickest and easiest way is through the interwebs, the internet, lombardichiropractic.com. And you can creep me there and check out our story. You could follow us on Instagram. You could find us on Facebook. You could search me on Facebook. Yeah, we're very reachable. Our numbers out there. So you can get a hold of anybody today.
Awesome. Well, dude, thanks for taking the time. I'll be seeing you next week here at the facility. And thanks again, Pete.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you having me on, and this was a blast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting our sponsors, Native Path Supplements and Lombardi Chiropractic. Visit nativepath.com and lombardichiropractic.com to learn more.